So, good day everyone. I'm Brian, moderator for this webinar. I welcome everyone for today's webinar, Top Solutions for a Healthy RCM Process, Knowledge Gained from Years in the Trenches. Please note you are placed in the listen-only mode for the duration of the webinar. We will have a Q&A session at the end. Also, this webinar will be made available for purchase in form of DVD, e-transcript and recorded link as the session is being recorded. I would now like to introduce our presenter for today, Caral Edelberg. Caral Edelberg is CPC, CPMA, CAC, CCSP, CHC, and chairman of Edelberg and Associates. She is a widely recognized expert on emergency department, ED, hospitalist, ambulance and urgent care revenue cycle management, coding and compliance. E&A provides coding and compliance support for many medical specialties, subspecialties. Carol has personally managed coding, billing, and compliance improvement projects for hundreds of facilities across the country. She develops training, auditing, and monitoring tools while providing compliance audits used to identify coding and billing programs for many medical specialties. Carol has been awarded honorary lifetime membership in the American College of Emergency Physicians, ACEP, for her outstanding work in the medical profession and the association. This is a unique honor for a non-physician. She is a long-term member of the Coding and Nomenclature Advisory Committee for the American College of Emergency Physicians and assists with development of ACEP's frequently asked questions on coding and reimbursement. She is a current member of the Board of Directors for the Emergency Department Practice Management Association, EDPMA. She is a frequent lecturer and an author for many healthcare organizations. Carol has dual coding certifications from the American Health Information Management Association and the American Academy of Professional Coders. She is also certified in healthcare compliance through the Healthcare Compliance Association. Is a certified medical auditor, a certified ambulance coder, and an active member of the Association of Clinical Documentation Improvement Specialists. Carol is also a HEMA certified instructor in ICD-10 diagnostic coding. I would now like to hand over the floor to the speaker. Over to you, Carol.
Well, thank you so much, and good morning, everyone, or afternoon, depending on where you are. We're delighted that you could join us today and talk about a very, very timely topic. And hopefully by the time we finish this discussion today, you will have some new solutions for some of your issues, as we know that right now revenue cycle management is a really, really tough area to be in. And we also know that, that it's there are as many questions as there are answers. And I'm hoping that my years of experience and dealing with the ins and outs and ups and downs and back and forth of all of these issues can shed a little light on some, perhaps some solutions that you may be able to find. First of all, my impression of all of this is, has the world gone crazy? And I truly almost think it has. And in many ways it has. Certainly COVID turned things upside down, changed everything for everyone. And those of us in healthcare saw some pretty tough days. Things are smoothing out a little bit, but we're still dealing with a lot of the cleanup and a lot of the issues, particularly financial issues, that still have not resolved. So I think for this discussion, it's really more of a fireside chat, if you will. I'm not throwing a ton of reports at you and a ton of Harvard MBA discussions at you. And if you came here for that, you're in the wrong place. Because what we're going to do is sit back and get comfortable and talk about some of the things that are happening and some of the tried and true resolutions for them. So first of all, what is revenue cycle management? Well, some of you think it's billing. but it isn't. It isn't just billing. Billing is a very important part of revenue cycle management, but billing, e.g., sending out claims, isn't really what it's all about. What it's all about is the start to finish management of getting claims to payers. So from the minute the patient walks in the door for their appointment or comes to the emergency department with their emergency, to the minute that that claim gets paid, either in your normal revenue cycle operations or through the collection agency, is revenue cycle, start to finish, A to Z. Staffing issues, I don't know about you, but it's pretty hard to get the same type of service that we got before COVID. I cannot for the life of me understand what COVID had directly to do with it, other than seems like a lot of good people gave up and went about their business and went someplace else. And a lot of new people tried different jobs and sort of didn't succeed, or tried them for a little bit of time and quit. So we're seeing significant staffing issues. Each department in revenue cycle has their own needs, their own issues, their own wins and their own losses. And we'll talk more about that. Coding transitions. We saw a huge coding transition in 22, and we're going to see, and we've seen another huge CPT coding transition in 23, which has absolutely turned upside down what is appropriate for documentation as it relates to coding, what is appropriate for coding as it relates to understanding the content of the codes, how it relates to IT, as they began to change the codes and make sure that there are checks and balances in place so that the wrong codes don't get used, how it relates to ICD-10 coding, how it relates to finance. If a code changes its content significantly, wouldn't we think we might want to change its price? Don't know. Depends on the specialty, but we have to look at it. So coding transitions have been a huge, huge issue. Hospital, clinic, office, depends on where you are. IT constraints. Everybody's moving to different types of IT resources. And yet, how do you determine if the IT resource is the best one for you? And I can't help but think, and experience has taught me, that people will often grab the cheapest and it doesn't do what they need to have done. And so you end up hiring an army of people to provide support. And you never get what you really need out of it. Because again, the manual support is only as good as the people that are providing it. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Artificial intelligence, what an exciting day it is to see artificial intelligence really coming into play. And yet it's an entirely new methodology. It's an entirely new requirement in terms of your office resources, getting it suitable for your practice, your style of practice, your EMRs, your coding, making sure it's coding correctly if that's what it's doing for you, making sure that the checks and balances are in place, making sure that when IT changes something on your EMR, your AI system can pick it up. Ins and outs, backs and forths, ups and downs. AI is going to be a really tremendous asset to medical practices, and yet it's going to take us a lot of work, a lot of focus, a lot of concentration to get us there. Denials management. This seems to be everybody's sore spot right now. Where before we just resubmitted the claim and got paid if there was a problem, or we should have known in advance what, sort of what the payment amount was, so we'd know what to write off and what to bill the patient. Now it's just unbelievable. Payers are downcoding services without ever looking at a chart. They're basically comparing the ICD-10 code to the CPT code, and voila. Was it medically necessary? Did it meet the criteria? Many of the payers will not share their criteria, so it's sort of a dartboard. So we need to talk a little bit more about that. Improving collections. Everybody wants to improve collections. There are a number of medical practices, because of the COVID hit, that still are not out of the woods. And so everything we can do to improve our internal efficiency, our processes, our interactions with physicians and payers and patients will help move towards improving collections. You can't just raise the charge. Raising the charge just generates higher write-offs in many cases. Raising charges requires an entire process to support it. And we have to also watch, what is happening with Medicare. We lowered the the payment this year for most specialties. Some of the RVUs went up. Some of the entire conversion factor went down. So, where are we going to be when all this is said and done? And hopefully you've done your homework and you know how you're going to be affected and you know what it's going to take to get yourself back to your steady state. Communicating with responsible parties, boy, this has become harder and harder because just as you're having issues in your practice, keeping good, educated, well-trained, excited people, so are the payers. Patients are so confused about what their responsibility is. And many of them are getting inaccurate information from payers and providers. And so, boy, we have a lot of work to do when we talk about how we communicate with the people that it's necessary to communicate with within our practice. What about refunds? Wouldn't it be nice if we got enough money to have to make refunds? Well, you can't keep it. And it's really, really problematic if it's not managed correctly. And I will tell you from experience as an auditor, as a fact finder, just an interested person who watches everything that goes on around her, sometimes refunds don't get paid the way they should. Sometimes people have the wrong intent and do funny things, and refunds never get paid because the money gets transferred into the wrong account. And I've seen situations where the police had to be called, and I just read about one recently. So refunds are a really touchy spot. Your patients deserve money back if they're the ones that are entitled to get it. In some cases, it's the payer that deserves money back. But whatever you do, refunds need to be researched and managed with the highest level of attention and checks and balances. Provider documentation and EMR constraints, holy cow. We have new EMRs coming out of new EMRs, and we have docs who are coming up with their own little templates, and no three physicians can agree on what those templates need to look like. All we know is they better provide the right kind of documentation for, first, the patient's problem, and second, for coding and reimbursement issues. So it was interesting when we went through the transition this year for emergency medicine, and emergency medicine is one of our many specialties, I must say, but a lot of them made the transition last year. And with emergency medicine, every doc wants to, do their own thing. And when told that history and physical really wasn't going to be part of the code level this year, that it was all going to be medical decision making, it was astounding to me how many physicians said, well, then tell me what's the least amount of writing I need to do. And that opened up a whole new can of worms, because it's, hey, docs, there's one amount of writing for reimbursement, but there's a huge amount of writing for clinical. And a history and physical, although maybe not scorable for your E&M, is always going to be essential for your clinical treatment, because the guy that comes in behind you to see this patient needs to know what you were thinking, needs to know why you did what you did. And history and physical are the big message as to why you did what you did down in the medical decision making. So that's really important. We see this coming year and this year and next year, a lot of the standard EMRs are being revised to try to meet the needs of artificial intelligence, try to meet the needs of multiple specialties handling a chart. For example, in the emergency department, you may have more than one specialty managing that record, handling that record, entering into that record. So it can't be all about the ER, and it can't be all about the surgeon, and it can't be all about the hospitalist. Everybody needs to have their little bells and whistles in there. So it's really important. And then finally, what would Marcus Welby say about all this? Now, I'm thinking that many of you don't know who Marcus Welby is. And Marcus Welby, we will talk about throughout this discussion today. And at the end of this discussion, I will talk to you and tell you about Marcus Welby and how he helped create the expectation of what a medical practice could be. So let's talk about revenue cycle. What is it? Well, here's a real quick and dirty. Okay, revenue cycle, patient gets treated. In the emergency department, in the clinic, in the office, in the hospital, it's scheduled, it's not scheduled, doesn't matter, patient gets treated. Now, you want to think that that's when revenue cycle begins. Next thing, record is reviewed. So somebody's going to look at that record. Somebody either at the hospital level, hopefully the doc takes another look at their record when they sign it, or it's going to be over at the RCM area. So the record comes over. We look at we do look at our logs, right? We do know how many patients we're seeing that we're responsible for billing for, right? So we're going to look at that record. So reviewing of that record is part of our revenue cycle. Record is coded. Oh boy, there's a whole big area. My company is a coding company. Pretty much that's what we do. And anything related to coding, we don't do the billing. Let me tell you, coding a record is an entire world unto itself. And you have to be able to identify every single necessary element of coding in order to make sure that that coding is accurate and that service, back to patient is treated, back to record is reviewed, that service is billed appropriately. The billing starts when the patient is seen. And yet the billing, really, when you think about it, starts when you recognize what has to happen to get the patient seen. So let's talk about that for just a minute. We're going to code the record, but don't we need to know who the insurer is? Because the insurers now, many of them have their own special rules and their own special contracts that your provider may have signed. So just getting the patient treated, that's not it. It starts before the patient ever walks into your office for a scheduled visit. In the emergency department, a lot of those patients aren't able to provide information. So who's making sure they're going to go back and get it? All of that funnels in to coding. And all of that has to be captured and accurate at coding. Because if coding isn't looking at it, then who's to say it's ever going to get looked at again? Because coding happens usually inside a technology system, not a manual system. Codes get put into the system, codes get added to the bill, UB goes out, 1500 goes out, claim bills go out to the patient, except statements go out, etc. So all of that kind of comes together when you're looking at coding. The billing part sounds pretty easy, but are you billing once a month? Are you billing monthly, but in weekly or daily bumps, so to speak? Why would you want to bill everything only once a month? Don't we want to get that bill out within a couple of days of that patient being seen? And if you're not able to do that, why? So revenue cycle is obviously getting the patient's information, getting them treated, reviewing the record, making sure it's complete, getting it coded accurately, getting it keyed into the system so the record and the bill can go out on a timely basis. But somewhere along the way, we always run into problems. And what are those problems? They could be just about anything that you can imagine. So did the system pick everything up the way it was supposed to? Did we have to suspend any of those records because the doctor didn't sign them, or we didn't have the insurance information, or something was missing on the record, or. And the problems vary depending on the site of service. You have teaching hospitals with residents, you're going to have some significant challenges until everybody gets on the same page. You have a practice where APPs see a lot of the patients. You may have some challenges there based on supervision guidelines, based on risk, based on a number of different issues. So difficulties can be as varied as there are petals on a flower. And I say that because just about the time you think you know and you've resolved them all, some new ones pop up. So this is a constantly evolving area. These are processes. And if your processes are healthy, then it's nothing to go in and tweak that process. Where the problems really seem to occur, particularly when managing difficulties, are when there is no process. We just kind of go by the seat of our pants. And today we're handling this, and tomorrow we're handling this. I will never forget the time I walked into a billing office for about 5 hospitals. And I walked down the hall. I was being shown, shown around and everything. It was really fascinated. And I walked down the hall and I noticed that there was a soiled linen closet and the door was open. And I said, wow, why is a soiled linen closet in here? Well, they'd taken over a particular area of the hospital and there was a soiled linen closet. But that soiled linen closet was stacked almost to the roof with paper. And I asked, what in the world? And I went in and looked. You know what it was? They were charts that couldn't be coded, or charts that were part of a backlog, or charts that required review in order to contact the patient or contact the payer. And there were hundreds of them. And when you take the average patient charge, which everyone on this call better know, even when you take the average patient charge and you multiply it times the stack of charts or the stack of problems that are not being managed, you have revenue in jeopardy. And that is an area that requires ongoing attention, high-level attention, and really good people managing it. Moving along, payment is received, but all payments are not created equal, are they? Because there are full payments and there are partial payments and there are payments that are denied. So part of our revenue cycle is payment processing. How fast can you do it? Can you trust, if you have a lockbox, can you trust that to be done correctly? Oh, buddy, I've seen some problems there. Can you look around and make sure that anybody that's getting checks in the mail, maybe in your office, if you have a small average size practice, can you make sure they're getting taken care of if there's a problem with them? For example, another story. I was in an office looking through a relatively robust practice and kind of went through and I said, okay, everybody, open your drawers. I want to see your top drawers. And in everyone's top drawer in the payment processing department were checks. And I said, why are these here? Well, these are the problems we're trying to resolve. Well, what kind of problems are they? Well, we can't find this patient, or I'm waiting for the insurance company to get back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Man, I'm going to tell you something. I don't believe in drawers. I haven't believed in drawers in many, many years. And the reason I don't believe in drawers will be answered if you walk into your billing department and start opening drawers. And that's all you have to do. My other pet peeve has been regarding medical records. Well, we account for all of our medical records, do you now? Well, okay. How long does it take to get those medical records resolved once they're kind of put on hold? Oh, we don't have any problem at all. Well, take me to the place where they are. Show me the file on your computer, or take me to the drawer in the doctor's office. Boy, I'm going to tell you what, don't you take anybody at their word, because when you start opening drawers, you're going to find things that are going to keep you awake nights. Don't let people put things in drawers. Don't let checks end up in drawers. Don't let cash end up in drawers. Be very, very careful. And refunds. Well, yeah, there's always going to be refunds, and there's always going to be delays with those refunds if you don't have a process. So go back and look at your refund process. Somebody's got to work that AR. Somebody's got to make sure they understand who gets paid that refund. Got to make sure that the right person gets refunded and the right amount gets refunded. Takes a lot of work. It takes a process. And your best people often have to be on this process because they have to know ins and outs, everything about that bill. So this is always an issue, and this is a big part of revenue cycle management. And then non-paid amounts sent to collection. Holy cow, going to collection. You cannot begin to imagine how many good, clean accounts get sent to collection because there's not enough resources to work them before they go. There's not enough resources to pick up the bad mail. There's not enough resources to check the website to see how many people did whatever they were supposed to do when you sent them a note that said, come to our website and give us your new address or give us your insurance information or whatever. So you're looking at non-paid amounts going to collection where some of them are good, really clean claims. And your collection agency thanks you because they're getting a huge percentage for the most part of what they collect. And you give them a bunch of clean stuff and they're going to make out like bandits. And there is no replacement for a good collection agency, but they should be doing their job on delinquent accounts, bad stuff, not the good stuff. So be very aware about that. Staffing issues. The heart and soul of any organization are the people. I don't care how good your IT is. I don't care how great your docs are. And we'll talk about that in a minute. It doesn't matter any of these things if you can't get the right people in the right spots to do the right job. Unless you want to work for one of those organizations where, and there aren't any really, but an organization, let's say, where artificial intelligence does the front end, the computer does the back end, everything's automated and no people are needed. Not going to find that. Not going to find that in revenue cycle, although we got a lot of stuff that's been automated in the last X number of years. So one of the things that we run into quite a bit is who gets to work from home. Now, some people look at working from home as a real Benny. Oh my God, I get to work from home. Isn't that the greatest thing? Some people look at that as a tremendous problem because they want to get out of the house. They have issues at home. Not everybody has good Wi-Fi. Not everybody has a quiet working space. Not everybody has a decent working space. Not everybody can guarantee that the medical records they're looking at home are protected and can remain protected all day. Some people just look at going to an office as a Benny, as a perk, as a good thing. And then some of us just want to stay in our pajamas all day, drink endless cups of coffee, which I have right here at my desk, and work from home, get it done, no interruptions, life is good. But you better know the difference between those two people because we've seen a lot of folks working from home floundering. We've seen a lot of people working from home who are a little bit dishonest and they're working two jobs. And because they're desperate, because they've got issues, because they're single moms with a mess of kids and daddy's not taking care of them the way they should. Or they're just dishonest people or whatever. It's got to be the right temperament, the right person, and you have to assure that all the checks and balances are in place to make sure that your information, your private information is not compromised. So I think, before you decide who's going to be working from home, you need to be able to prove that they've had experience, good references in that, and their personality is going to work with that kind of situation. Some people don't work well in an office. Some people are little butterflies and like to flit around and talk to everybody and get easily distracted with all the motion in an office. So these are issues that you really have to look at when you think about how you're going to staff. And nowadays we see a little bit of both. We see, you work from home most of the time. You come in to the office, or you take turns. Some working from home on alternate weeks, et cetera. The sky's the limit in how you decide to set that up. But there has to be a hard and fast, refined process for the job that person does. There has to be checks and balances on the validity of the work, the accuracy of the work, and the timing of the work, and make sure that it gets done correctly. Training focus. Well, training is a biggie. Training, If you're just throwing people into a job and then tearing your hair out when it doesn't work, well, shame on you. People have to be trained. They are entitled to be trained. They are due to a large part to being trained appropriately, and they want to be tested. I want to know if I'm starting a new job that I know what it's all about and that I'm going to do it right, because I sure as heck don't want to have to do it again, nor do I want to do it wrong and feel that I've caused someone a lot of money, cost someone accuracy, cost someone a lot of days that can't be recovered. So training focus is probably the number one issue. And one of the things that we see contributes significantly to folks leaving or you having to terminate them is that they were not trained appropriately to understand the ins and outs of their job. They were not, there was no oversight provided so that they could ask questions, and they didn't get feedback. And so we're talking really training, oversight, and we'll talk more about human resources. So training has to be, I would think you have a training manual, particularly for people off site. I would think that you watch folks as they're being trained and then one-on-one review how they're actually working in real time, to be there to answer the questions that you can't possibly in any way, shape, or form know about before the job actually starts. So there are always going to be those questions. And the worst thing for a new employee is to start and not have someone to go to. And in revenue cycle, it's dangerous. And in revenue cycle, every minute is costing money. Look at your staffing cost, divide it by the number of hours in the year, typically 2080, and then see what an hour of confusion, an hour of downtime, an hour of anger, frustration, I'm locking myself in the bathroom because I can't stand to walk back out there, is going to cost your organization. And it's going to cost your docs. And bottom line in all of this is we perform the services that we perform for our clients. They depend on us. And if we can't get our act together, our docs are going to pay for it. And ultimately, our patients will pay for it. And they're the real losers. Because if we've got a great team of docs that can't afford to continue doing what they're doing and have to cut staff or cut services or cut hours or whatever, our patients are the ultimate, absolutely the ultimate, area that gets hurt. So we want to be careful about that. Human resources. Do you have human resources? You can get a human resources company, just kind of a contracted company. They don't have to sit in your office, and they'll kind of guide you and lead you on what needs to happen. But you better have somebody helping you when somebody decides to leave in anger, or you have to let somebody go, or you want to fill a position. There's a lot of mad people out there when they get fired, and you don't want them coming back on you. So you've got to have somebody managing human resources. And I know some of you on this call represent small practices, and having an HR officer sitting in a small practice is just not going to happen. But you should be contracted with an HR agency that can provide the type of information and the type of support you need, and in just the right amounts, and save you. And oversight is part of human resources, but oversight is part of training too. Somebody needs to be the big kahuna in the sky, watching how this practice is working, watching how this revenue cycle company is working. Are we doing what we're supposed to do? Are half the people mad and quitting? Are these people over here doing something they're not supposed to do? Or we have family members coming in looking over the shoulder when we've got EMRs wide open with patient information. Did Mary Sue walk out there with a bunch of patient files in her briefcase? What are the rules? How do we know? How do we know what they are if I'm an employee unless somebody tells them and continues to oversee the processes, the individuals, the ins and the outs? Teamwork is my favorite topic. I have a lot of favorite topics actually, but teamwork is one of them. There are so many wonderful things you can do to build a team. but it's harder to do with our remote world today. So you have to really think out of the box. I remember, some of the best things I ever saw with teamwork were putting groups and teams, and not just the coding team. You have a team that's made up of the front end, the middle, and the back. So each discipline is represented, and so they all get judged. They all get little perks if this one outperforms that one. What are the performance requirements? What does over and above mean? Well, over and above means somebody better know what standard is. And so putting people in teams and having them work together and understand each other and go to each other when there are issues. Now, we're not talking about teamwork so people can just sit and grump at each other about how things don't work the way they want. No. We're talking about teamwork with a team leader that is rah-rah, all positive, and with that team, help identify things that need attention in the process in the organization. And teamwork can also help reward. I mean, I've had 3 revenue cycle type companies in my career, and we always had a team, monthly team star. And the team that, met certain criteria or went over and above, would get something for that. It was either a luncheon for the entire team out of the office, or because everybody likes money, it was a bonus for each of the team members for that month to kind of help them a little bit financially. It can be any number of things. I'm going to tell you something. I love walking into revenue cycle offices and seeing those beautiful little certificates on somebody's cubicle. Or when I'm on, this type of call, looking behind their heads and seeing those nice little certificates that says, team of the month, employee of the week, over and above award, those types of things. It gives people the incentives to keep working and keep looking and keep interest and keep thinking out of the box. And it rewards people for being part of the team and taking it to the max. And nothing could be more important, because you're only as good as your weakest link. And we've all heard that forever, but it's really true. You'll spend 90% of your time on 10% of your people and keep you pulled away from the things that you need to do. Client service. Well, who's your client? Boy, I'll tell you, there's some convoluted systems today. The hospital is your client, but you're working for the surgeons. But really, your contract is with their revenue cycle company. Or, you're working for the doctors, but the hospital has a big say because the hospital's paying their salary. And so who's doing their billing, and are they doing it correctly? And are you just kind of the middle person? Or are you actually doing all of the revenue cycle, not just the billing, all of the revenue cycle? Are you responsible for the entire revenue cycle? Because if you're responsible for the front end and somebody else is handling the back end, you better know about it. So if you do all the coding for your doctor, but all that gets put into the hospital system and gets spit out by the hospital, are you 100% sure that stuff's going in the way you put it in? You cannot imagine how many times we find coding changes. And when those coding changes go awry, you're going to be held accountable because you're the coder or you're the biller. And are you making sure that your doctor's claims are being handled correctly when they go on to the next level? Now, if you're working for the revenue cycle company and everything is being handled by one large company and you're part of a process that's incorporated in all of that, okay, but who's your boss and who's your client? And knowing who your client is the most important thing. Is it the doctor? Is it the billing company? Is it the hospital that the doctor works for? Who's your client? Who do you take your ideas to? Who do you want to protect? Who do you want to collaborate with when rules change and coding rules change, requiring more documentation in service? Who's going to do that documentation in service? Who's your client? Are you going to do it with the doctors, Or is the company that you work for technically going to do it for your doctors? And do they understand what you know about that practice? So who's your client? Very, very important. And if you know who your client is, and if you interact with those clients, that's a whole big, different topic, because these clients better consider you a friend. They better consider you a trusted ally. And you never want a client to call you and tell you something about your job that should be done that you didn't know wasn't getting done. The worst thing that can happen is have a client say, hey, did you notice that our higher level codes are half of what they were 2 months ago? Dun, dun, dun. Trouble. So you better know. Who's your client? Who's responsible? Who are you responsible to? And what are you doing? Reviewing reports, double checking what you're doing QA, someone else doing QA. Who's assuring that that client is getting that service? What do you do when employees don't get along? Oh man, is there ever a week where everybody's just happy and likes each other? Nope. Nope, 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 nope. People bring their home issues to work, and it can color everything they do while they're there. People take their work issues home, and when they do, it can color everything that happens while they're there. So we have a responsibility to provide a safe, efficient workplace. I don't think it's efficient, and I don't think it's safe if employees are fighting with each other. I don't think the job can get done. I think people spend a lot of time fuming and being upset and not concentrating on what they need to concentrate. And if I'm worried a lot about fighting with Mary Sue over here, I'm not worrying about my client. I'm not worrying about my job. You better get on that stuff quickly. And there are a lot of things you can do. I think one of the best is to put them together on a project with someone who is known as a facilitator, a mediator. The other thing you can do is send them to a conference, or bring in the conference person to your office and sit your problem children down and go through hands-on problem-solving education. That's probably the best money you'll ever spend. But you cannot allow people to argue and fight and disparage each other when they work in a revenue cycle company, or anywhere for that matter. But there's a lot of money and there's a lot of compliance at stake in our industry. And our staff has to work together. And if you've got folks that can't get along, I can guarantee you it's not happening. And we can talk a lot more about that. Bonuses and special rewards. I'm the biggest person in the world, biggest believer in bonuses and special rewards. Because as I said when I talked about teamwork, I just don't think anything shows appreciation more than an employer that knows enough about what their staff is doing and honors that hard work and that dedication in some way. In my company, everybody gets a bonus on the anniversary of their employment. And I've had people that have worked for me for 20 years, 25 years. Can you imagine that bonus? And we always pay a cash amount on their birthday. They either get a bonus or they get that day off. Sounds crazy, I know, but I want to tell you, I get a lot of good feedback from my staff, particularly when we've been going through some really, really, really hard work times, and their birthday pops up and it's bye-bye. We don't want to hear from you. We don't want to see you. And on top of that, special rewards, and I go back to those little certificates, but giving somebody, acknowledgement for doing something special makes all the difference in the world. And it's not all about making money. It's not all about, beating up the system and getting it done and, nose to the grindstone. I like to think that people enjoy their job. And that doesn't mean there aren't times when you want to pull your hair out. We all have that. But I think the best way for people to really want to be loyal to the mission is to make sure we're loyal to them as employers. And I think that loyalty comes in a lot of ways. You've got a family problem, take the day off. You've got a little one that's, got to go to the ER, we'll cover for you. Don't worry about it. You've got some issues where they frankly turned off your lights. Honey, here's an advance. And I know the bigger the companies get, the harder it is to look down into the individuals. And I'm not saying that all of these things will work for you, but I'm saying you have to have a way to reward good employees. Because if you do, you will keep them. You will keep them. They will become friends for life. And you want people to be loyal, and you want them to be, I say your friend, you want to have a friendly relationship. And it's hard to separate, sometimes the hard work and the supervision issues from friendship. You don't want to get too tight with people, but you really want to make sure that you're respecting, and it's all about respect, that you respect your team, that you can acknowledge their human needs. Coding transitions. I alluded to that a little bit earlier, and we got a lot of issues with coding transitions these days. Hopefully this one of 2023 will be the last, but don't count on it, because Medicare always has to get in there and stir it up a little bit. So we're gonna have ongoing changes in coding guidelines, and we have guidelines that are so confusing that the real rule comes out when somebody clarifies it. And you've got Medicare, you got AMA, then you have your regional payers, and you got your Medicaid, which is, federal funding. So, you have to have a hierarchy. Who makes the rules? Whose rules do you follow? Most of you, I hope, are watching your MACs for Medicare, because Medicare, can say one thing, but the MAC is the one that's going to audit and pay your claims. The same thing with coders. Do they understand all of that information? If you've got a coder that went through the transition with surgery, does that mean that coder is going to be able to go through the transition with hospital medicine? Well, yeah, maybe, but how do you know? You know by doing educational seminars, and you know by testing out, and you know by performing quality assurance audits day by day by day, pre-billing preferably, until everything's right. When you're looking for coders, it is a wild world. It is a wild world right now. It's what I call a seller's market. Onshore coders are getting harder and harder to find for some of the larger specialties. Onshore meaning in the United States. We know that there are offshore coding companies, India, Philippines. Somebody just started a company in Ireland, I think, Ireland and Scotland, because they were English speaking, except it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're on the moon. If you think for 1 second that a vendor that reports to you is going to do everything the way you need it done, and you're just going to send the codes on to the computer and go home, guess again. You're setting yourself up. Doesn't matter who does your coding. It's going to require ongoing training, ongoing review, ongoing training, ongoing review, ongoing rule changes, written policies and procedures, dated policies and procedures, ongoing training. I can't say it enough. Doesn't matter whether they're in your office or halfway around the world. You still have to have oversight. You can do internal training. We do all our own training with PowerPoints. We have an entire training machine, so to speak, an entire audit machine, so to speak. We do education and training for clients and outsiders, as well as for our own in-house projects. Critically important. And that stuff has to be kept up to date and has to be accurate. So you don't change an education presentation unless you try it first and make sure it does what you want it to do. So training programs, internal and external. Audits, internal and external. I mean, internal audits on your own stuff. A lot of you do external audits on your clients. If you're a revenue cycle company that work for other clients, other numerous practices, then you're going to have to do audits on the documentation, or you may have to do audits on other coders that are helping out. You got to always watch that. So who performs your audits? Hopefully they're the smartest, the best of the best. We call them Top Guns because I'm a Top Gun fan. So my Top Guns are the best of the best. But who audits them? We had a situation one time many years ago where the biggest mistakes that were made one day were by an auditor who stepped in to fill in for somebody who was out sick and didn't take the time to look at the client profile and coded everything all screwed up. And thank God the chief financial officer was a good bud and gave us the respect of getting it fixed. But stuff happens, and you can't guarantee that the stuff that happens is always the way you want it to be. So you do your internal audits, and if anybody comes in and touches one of your clients for the first time, somebody's got to be looking over their shoulder. Doesn't matter if it's the good Lord himself. Somebody's got to be looking over their shoulder and make sure that it's being done correctly. And then you have coding compliance management. Who do your coders go to when they have a problem? Who do your coders go to when they don't like the way something's being coded or don't like the policy that's being followed? Gotta have somebody that basically, breaks the tie, so to speak. Somebody in authority who says, this is the way it is. This is why it's the way it is. And by golly, this is how we're going to do this. And if you have a problem with that, then we've got a problem with you. Because once you have demonstrated understanding of the problem, resolution of the problem, then everybody's got to get on board. Now, I hate to get into the whole issue of payers, and these are bad behaviors, not bad payers, although some of these payers are driving us all crazy. But first thing you've got to know is who makes the rules. Who makes the rules for how you get paid? You have your in-network and your out-of-network, which can cause a whole heap of issues. We've got the No Surprises Act, which was enacted and still brings us a lot of surprises. And then when everything fails and you've done everything you want to do and the payers just won't behave, you got to go legal. You've got to involve either your legal department or your corporate attorney or somebody to look at what's going on. Look at the contracts. Make sure you're doing what you said you were going to do. And what I find so many times is the people responsible for managing the claims don't have the first clue about what the practice is contracted for with these payers. And so before you start, arguing and fighting with these payers, you better pull the contract if there are any. You better look on their website for their provider rules. You better look at their coding rules. You better look at their payment rules. And if you've done everything the way it's supposed to be done, and in many times that's just a matter of sending the right codes, and they're still still not paying your claims or denying your claims or downcoding your claims, you better be real sure that you didn't sign away your rights. And again, back to the contract, get a lawyer. Managing these payers, again, contracts are critical. The people in your revenue cycle department need to know what you've contracted for and what you haven't. I had a surgeon tell me last week, boy, capitation's really looking good. Actually, he said, social medicine's really looking good because these payers just decide they don't want to pay. It doesn't matter. And you argue with them forever, doesn't matter. They have their own internal rules that they won't share with anybody. And so you go the legal route, and then they pull up a piece of paper that says, here it is right here. Look here. This is how we have to do it. And you never know, what the secret is, the black box, so to speak. You never know. You can never understand it. So, more and more doctors are wanting to take the easier way. It's so much work. And we're going to talk about Dr. Welby and what he had to do to make sure he got his money in. So who's managing the shop? Who's minding the shop? Who do you talk to? Who talks to your payers? Better be somebody that knows everything about your practice everything about these codes that you're sending in, everything about your contracts, because you don't want somebody to get on there and finally get the person in charge, if you're lucky enough to get to that person, and then blow the opportunity by not having the facts straight. And it's the times that you talk to someone with authority at a payer, few and far between. Few and far between. You find out more on the golf course, or at the local watering hole, Starbucks, whatever, than you often find out on the phone. Again, does everyone understand payer contract terms? What are the terms for coding? What are the terms for payment? What are the terms for managing the claims? I am seeing hospitals spending hundreds of thousands, if not more, dollars in managing claims that they get a fraction of back, even if they win. So when you look at a resource cost, your resource cost for doing, let's just say for doing, managing claims denials, let's say your resource cost for a claim is $420. And you're arguing about the difference between two levels of care. And if you win, you're going to get 120. Is that worth it? Now, stubborn me would say yes, because, and here's the catch. Many times these payers will take, when they say we'll pay you if you change it to what we say it should be, and you want to get some money, because they're not going to pay you unless you do this. So you want to get some money, so you code it to that lower level. Well, when they report the E&M distributions or the payments, they take the one that you changed it to, not the one you billed it as. And that presents an entire skewed picture of the acuity in your practice or at your hospital. And so then everybody billing it correctly is going to be compared to you who've had to drop those levels and bill at a lower level. And it gets real confusing and really difficult. So a lot is going on. A lot needs your very, very careful analysis. So best of the best need to be working on these denials, and it helps if they have a clinical background or you have a clinical person that's helping. And I wish you luck with all of this, because I'll tell you, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Hospital, clinic, IT, office constraints, holy cow. Has anybody had IT say, hey, yeah, I can get that done by tomorrow? Has anybody asked for IT to give them a report and have IT say, yeah, I'll knock that out by the end of the week? Good luck with that. First of all, half the time they have to go design it. So when you're talking about software and you're thinking about, gee, our software is broke, you don't make a move until you get the best of the best within your organization to sketch out what it is they need and why. And then that information becomes sort of your software wish list. And then you can begin to talk to IT. It just doesn't work to go in and say, hey, I want this, because this has a lot of hooks on it that go in and hook other programs. And so when this gets changed, you may break that over there if somebody doesn't know that it works with that piece of that program. And I'm talking really not formal IT language, because I'm hoping a lot of you on this call aren't formal IT people. You already know this stuff, but you need to understand that you shouldn't be developing software that hasn't been designed by the real experts. And those are the people in the trenches. So dare to think about what you want. Design what it is you think it should do. Make sure that when changes are being made to programs or changes are being made to reports, that the best people on your team are there to approve it. You cannot imagine how many times in my life I've had to sit there and look at a brand new report with a calculator next to me, only to find that the totals aren't right. Only to find that the charge isn't the most current charge next to a CPT code. Only to find that I'm going to pull my hair out when I get home. So make sure that you check any new report, check, and recheck. Also, everything is about reports, whether they're on paper, whether they're on a screen, doesn't matter. You have to be able to look deeply into your financial performance, deeply into how well your processes are working, deeply into how you're staffed up and what your resource costs are. If you don't know your resource costs, both direct and indirect, I can guarantee you're losing money. Quality. How do you report on quality? Well, you can report on quality from quality audits on coding. You can do it on billing, on refunds, on management, revenue cycle management components, whatever it is that you're doing, the little bits and pieces and processes in your organization, you need to be able to know that they're working efficiently and working the way they should. So all of these things you need to be tracking and looking at data on. And don't forget collections. When you dump that stuff over to a collection agency, you have to have the same reports that you use to manage all of your current revenue cycle. So how long, what did you send over to collections? What were the payers? How old was it? And when money starts coming in, how much was it? So when you pay that percentage to the collection agency or however you're paying it, what are you paying for? Where are your checks and balances? How do you know that you're not sending them clean claims? So let's double check our reports and make sure that we have reports in that area as well. Artificial intelligence, golly, that gets me so excited. There's so many fantastic new things out to play with. However, none of them are going to be easy. AI requires a lot of work to get it up and going, to design, redesign, and redesign again. You also have to know how it's going to apply to your practice or organization, because AI is going to basically take the data on that record and slice and dice it and convert it into codes, or convert it into callback information, or convert it into charges, or convert it into whatever it needs to be converted into. There's so many applications for AI right now. And so you have to know what you want it to do, and you have to assure that it's going to do it. And if you expect it to start doing it on the click of a button, guess again, it's not going to happen. You'll work up to, full accuracy. But somebody's going to have to be there to edit it, to audit it, and to basically fill in the blanks while it's getting up to time and up to scale. So make sure that you don't let everybody go and say, okay, AI's taking over, we can cut staff in half. Good luck with that. Because when you're implementing AI, you got to have some really good people telling them how this is supposed to work. And then when it starts working, people to pick up the deficits, et cetera, et cetera. So as soon as you perfect it, the rules are going to change. You better believe it. Can AI code better than a human? Maybe. Can AI code faster than a human? Maybe. And how do you determine accuracy, and how do you determine speed? Bottom line is, most people are being held to 95, 97% accuracy. Once you've determined what accuracy is determined by rules. Accuracy is determined by appropriate auditing. Accuracy is determined by random sampling or focus sampling. You got to determine. Some of it's focused and some of it, that auditing is random. Pre-billing or post-billing. If you do it post-billing and you find a bunch of problems, you got to pay all that money back, or you got to rebill. That's a nightmare. Is AI going to give you everything you need from the get-go? Heck no. It's only as good as you are. It's only as good as you are in telling it what you need it to do. Okay, moving right along. Denials management. Denials management, as I said, is getting to be one of the biggest areas of complexity and resource. There are entire corporations being formed just to manage this. What does that say? We've been doing that for a number of years for our clients. Now we've taken on outside clients, and buddy, every denials management program is something different, and it is time consuming. This isn't what you call coding. This isn't just assigning a code, reading a chart, signing a code, and going. This is pouring through. I love doing denials management personally, my own self. I love looking at these things because it tells you everything you need to know about that patient, and it tells you a lot about that payer. And I can make the case. I do in court, and I do in management programs with handling these denials. And you can make the case all day long, but you absolutely cannot predict what that payer is going to do. And so you want to make sure you throw everything you have into this process. Resources needed, you better have the best of the best on it, and hopefully some clinical people. You do a ton of research. And if you're not researching to get all of the guidelines and compliance guidelines, as well as clarifications from the AMA and from your specialty, then you're not doing your job right, because all of that needs to be in that document that you send back. Takes a lot of time. Whatever time you estimate on a per chart basis or per claim basis, it's probably going to be double, triple, quadruple. Staffing, how do you staff up when you're getting stuff dumped on you at off and on during the month that has a 3-day turnaround on it or a 1-week turnaround on it? Or your client is holding on to it forever and not getting it to you, or the department that's managing it is sitting on it and not getting it done. Denials need to be managed as quickly as they come in with a very, very fast turnaround. And if you can't guarantee that, you're going to be in trouble. You have to have guidelines. There needs to be written guidelines about how you're going to manage it. And you cannot do denials management without contracts. And when I say contracts, the contracts between the provider and the payer, because you can write the most beautiful document only to find that the payer contracted for something that the payer and the provider contracted, and that you were paid accurately. And you're fighting like the dickens to get this done, and you didn't know because nobody gave you the contract. So don't touch denials until you have the contracts. And you're always going to end up with legal support. Nowadays, you fight back and forth for 3 to 6 months, and then you end up going to court, particularly with a significant denials load. So I think it's healthy to have legals right at the beginning. Improving collections. Again, we've talked about that. How do your patients reach you? Call center. Let me ask you something. Does anybody in your organization know what the hold times are? I was in a doctor's office 2 weeks ago, and the staff was having trouble getting through to doctors in that particular medical practice. It was a multi-specialty practice. They couldn't even get through to get an appointment or to handle a deal. Nobody's going to sit on the phone for 30 or 40 minutes waiting to pay you money. So you better make sure that the hold times are reasonable. And I think 3 minutes is about as long as it ought to be. While they're holding, are they listening to that nasty music that they can barely hear? Or are you telling them what to do if they have to hang up? Do you have a website where people can go and give their insurance information? Does the bill say, provide your insurance information on our website today and we'll leave you the heck alone? What are your hours of operation? Does it ever occur to you? I have a doctor that they're open from like 9 to 4. Well, people that work are at work at that. Oh, and they close for lunch. So how would I ever call that person if I'm at work on the phone all day, or if I'm out driving in my truck around delivering these wonderful packages that we all get delivered to our front door? How am I going to call that doctor? They're never there. And when I leave a message, the message often says, don't call again. It will delay us getting back to you. Well, yeah, I call again and I call again and I call again because nobody ever returns my call. So my God, if you really want to keep your collections coming in, make sure your patients can call you, ask you the questions, and when they get a hold of somebody, can that person not know what the rules are? When is Medicaid primary and when is Medicare primary and when is secondary? That ought to be the first test people take. How do we get approved for a procedure? What's the process? And by the way, when was the last time you called? And did the doctor give you the information you needed so you don't waste your time? So the expertise of your patient advocates or your call center people or whatever you want to call them is really critical. The efficiency that you have in place, is what's going to make the difference for you. And collection agency interface on those delinquent accounts, you need to know, because what's happening over there, because I will guarantee you there are people in this world that refuse to pay the collection agency $1 because they've tried to get a hold of your office 1,000 times and couldn't. And now they're angry. Now they're not going to acknowledge that they've been sent to collection. They only want to talk to you. So there you go. Communicating with responsible parties. Again, you better understand insurance because other people often don't. Payers, you better know the rules, because once you get a hold of somebody at the payer level, I can pretty much guarantee you they don't know everything. So you might need to help them. I always tell my staff, you haven't done your job if the person that you're communicating with doesn't thank you when they say goodbye. And I know there are times that may not be the case. I mean, I've lost my temper too. Whew, have I lost my temper. But golly, our patients are entitled to the highest level of kindness and collaboration that we can give them. And if they get upset and start yelling at us, it's from frustration. And I can tell you, when I can't reach a doctor, and I've tried 3 or 4 times, I'm getting a little testy. So think of ways that your patients can find you, reach you, talk to you, resolve their problems. The worst thing is to sit, one of the worst things, there's worse, but one of the worst things is to sit on hold for 30 minutes and get somebody that doesn't have a freaking clue what it is, you need. They don't know how to answer your question. And what do they tell you? Give me your number and I'll have someone call you back. Yeah, hold your breath on that one. So make sure that your people are trained. Make sure that you take them through tests. Make sure that you know what people are calling about today. Because if most of your calls today are about some kind of crazy problem that all is somehow linked, maybe you've got a glitch in your system. Maybe your phone system's got a problem. Maybe your computer went wacko. I don't know. We've found that a million times in some of the audits that we've done. And your patients are often the first clue. So be careful. Wait times, 3 minutes, folks. No more than 3 minutes. And when that happens, when you're over 3 minutes, that means you need additional staff. And can you staff at the right times, et cetera? How about giving people some hours before work and after? How about having somebody come in at 6 in the morning till 9 when you open, and somebody stay from 4 to 7 at night when you're closed, and answer the phone and do some extra work and keep things, manageable. Because again, not all of your patients can call when you're open, and that's so aggravating. And not everybody has a computer to get on the website and answer, and ask you the questions. And I'm going to tell you, having spent half of my life on websites or on Google or whatever, just doing the research to see how well a practice is holding up, I can tell you, I get so confused. Because the software, the website is developed in such a way that, okay, you put this number in, then you got this number, and then they send you this, and then you got to put that back in, and then you got to go over there. Oh, wait a minute, you don't have your password. Oh, you didn't know you needed one? Yeah, you got to have a password. Well, what? Oh, my Lord, I could go on for days. Your patients are not as well-trained and as smart and as maybe and many times educated as you are. And you need to dumb it down to the lowest common denominator if you want to solve the problems that you have communicating with your patients. And you also have to remember that you're representing a physician that went to a gazillion years of school and literally holds someone's life in his or her hands on an ongoing basis. That's who you're representing. So you need to be as kind and professional and thoughtful as you can be and solve the problem. Know what the resources are. Know what the issues are. Know what to say and what not to say, and always, always be kind and professional. Refunds, we talked about that a little bit. How are they determined? You better have a really detailed report, and you may have rules. You have to have rules about what's a refund. Overpayments are not all created the same. Who manages them and what was their training? And big one here. Who signs the checks? Dear Lord. I've seen everything known to man here. And as I told you, I've actually seen situations where the police had to be called because somebody wasn't doing it the right way, wasn't doing it fair, and wasn't doing it legal. So where are they? Where are the checks kept? Who manages the balances? Who manages managing the refunds? And are we sure they're a refund? And are we sure the money's tight? Are we sure money's not going, and the refunds are going into someone's account that's not associated with the practice? And you get my drift. And this sounds extreme and it sounds crazy because nobody we know would ever do anything like that. But when you've been in this business as long as I have, you know that people have done things like that. So make sure you have checks and balances on your refunds. Provider documentation and provider coding. Docs can be coders. They need the same training and testing if they are. Documentation has to support the codes they assign, and a lot of times it doesn't. You or somebody needs to be auditing their code assignment, and you have to look at how things get from the documentation to a code. And if they're coding, you got to in-service them regularly. Docs is docs. Now that's a much easier one. However, they must know the common documentation requirements. So they get just as involved as the docs who do their own coding, maybe more so. You have to watch the EMR structure, and any canned and cloned phrases, watch out. Because, when the patient comes in and is called a female, they better stay a female through there. They can't be copying stuff out of the male chart and putting it in there. They can't be copying phrases. I have reviewed all tests in this doc. I have reviewed all tests performed during this visit. And then you review the chart and there aren't any tests performed. Hello. What are we going to do about that? So you have to really watch that. Downcoding reports are critical for docs who, and I say downcoding reports, if someone's doing the coding and the docs are not giving you the appropriate information you need to code that chart where it needs to be coded, you need to keep track of that. And the docs need to know at the end of every month, hey, we had to downcode or recode these charts because you didn't give us the right documentation to code it where it should have been. And therefore, you've lost the practice X number of dollars. And we've done that successfully for many years. And we've had clients from the start, anywhere from $500,000 to almost $1 million in lost, quote, charges because they couldn't be coded due to documentation deficiencies. And within 5 to 6 months, down to, $20,000 a year. And that's only from, docs who come in and are not really part of the group, ongoing part of the group. So you've got to have reports that tell you how your docs are doing, how their documentation is doing. You need to let them know if they're not doing it right. You need to work as professionals. We don't talk about slapping hands. These people work themselves half to death seeing patients, and today it's the hardest it's ever been. So they are professionals, as are you, and we want to give them reports and give them documentation as to what's wrong and give them the steps to what is right. Now, I told you I was going to talk about Marcus Welby. Marcus Welby was the doctor that people in the 50s, and yes, I was alive in the 50s, people in the 50s worshipped. He was the one that set the standards for medical practice. Why? Dr. Welby, actually, my doctor came to my house and gave me shots when I was a little girl. Can you imagine that? Well, Dr. Welby loved all his patients. He was the most friendly, kind person. They could sit and talk to him about marital problems and family problems, and Dr. Welby would just stop everything. Dr. Welby never talked about money, and that was standard in healthcare for many, many, many years. The doctor never talks about money. It's the person at the front desk that talks about money. Now I have doctors that know more about RVUs and conversion factors and Medicare plans and programs than anybody I know. And that's okay. That's okay. They typically don't discuss it with their patients, but some of them do. And you want to make sure that they are well advised and educated about what they need to tell those patients so the patients and the doctors are in sync and working on the same wavelength. You also need to know that you'll know more about patient dissatisfaction before the doc does, because patients Nowadays, they're getting a little more mouthy than used to be, but patients don't typically complain to the doctor. They're going to complain about paying that bill. Or they're going to call you and raise Cain about how bad that doctor treated them and file a complaint, et cetera, et cetera. And that's when you have to work directly with whoever's in charge of that specialty and dealing with patient complaints. That may not be something that you do. But if you get those kind of complaints while you're dealing with revenue cycle problems, that needs to be kicked up and somebody else needs to deal with it. Who coordinates those patient complaints? Clinical issues, payment issues, front desk issues. Who do you have to deal with that? And when all is said and done, patient complaints about providers need to go to the provider group. And there has to be one person that's set aside to manage all of that and deal with the doctors. That should not be your job. Well, we've just about run out of time. I've left a little bit of extra time for questions for anyone who may want to kind of dig a little bit deeper in all of this. I have to tell you, I've enjoyed this immensely. I hope that I've been able to shine some lights, if you will, on some of the common problems and give you some just basic, down-to-earth, normal answers to some of the questions. It's not all textbook. A lot of it is common sense, and sometimes we forget to use that common sense. So I'll be happy to take a breath and take questions from anybody who has them.
Thanks, Caral. That was a wonderful webinar. So as she said, we are open for the questions. If you wish to ask any question, you can type your question in the chat box and wait for the answer to be announced. I think at this time there is no further questions from the participant. So I would like to get back to you, Caral, for the final remarks.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. It's been a pleasure talking about one of my favorite subjects. I have quite a few, but this is one of my favorites, and my passion and interest, if you will, come from watching people try to do the best thing and knowing what tools they need to do it. And it also comes from seeing how dramatically our industry is changing. So best of luck to everyone. Thank you so much for attending. And we hope to see you again another day for another seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Caral. That does conclude the session for today. You may all disconnect now. Thank you for everyone for participating.